At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
It is a new day for 911 professionals. They have gone from the most important person you will never see to the most vital piece of public safety. Truth be told, they always have been. The curtain has been pulled back, and they are sharing their stories. Welcome to Imagine Listening. Your Worst Day is Our Everyday by Ricardo Martinez II, and narrated by myself, Ricardo Martinez II, and distributed by Beacon Audio Books. Copyright 2023. That's right, everyone. Finally, I can let everyone know the rumors are true. Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday is now available as an audiobook on Audible, and it's a long time coming. Very excited. Not a lot of authors get the opportunity to voice their own book, but I had the honor and privilege to do so. So thank you to Beacon Audio Books, as well as my publisher, Titled Town Publishing, for everything, but especially all of you for making the I Am 911 movement, as well as Imagine Listening, what it is today. I appreciate you all more than you know. So go ahead, head out, stream it, download it, however you consume your audiobooks. Imagine Listening is now available. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are back. It is 2024, man. January 2nd, 2024, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you so very much. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you, but especially all of you who are here watching, listening, sharing, and supporting. I appreciate you more than you know. As I just said, we're in the new year, man. Woo! Yep. What a 2023. How crazy. 2023, there was a lot of good that happened in 2023, and there was a lot of craziness that happened in 2023 as well. But just closing off the year and starting new in 2024, for 2023, it was a 10-year anniversary of the podcast, 10-year anniversary of being out of dispatch, also a 10-year anniversary for this partnership that I've had with Nina, and that's the National Emergency Number Association. And just a lot of good things happened. Also, publishing Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday. That was book one. That is book one in a series of books that are going to be coming out. And book two is going to be coming out August 4th, 2024 at the APCO conference in Orlando, where it all started. So full circle, and I'm super happy about that. But also, in 2023, the podcast surpassed over 2.2 million downloads, and it is heard in over 60 countries. So thank you again, all of you, for everything. It has been awesome. There's a lot of good things that are going to be coming up as well for 2024, and you will just have to stay tuned for all of that as more information comes up. So, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm excited to tell you about. And I can be like a little kid on Christmas morning and just want to unwrap everything and just have it all out there. I have to have some restraint, though. Some of that stuff have to hold back for now, but you will find everything out soon. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started here. And my guest today was not only one of my speakers for Dare to Be Great 5, which was an amazing session, and the session was called Stress Management in You. And I'm excited for this because there's a lot of different things that we're going to be talking about, and I'm looking forward to getting to learn more about my guest as well. My guest today is Rhianna, and she is a training supervisor as well as a peer support lead over at Salt Lake Valley Communications Center. Yo.
Hey.
How are things? How's your 2024 going so far?
Well, it has been crazy so far, so it's just in the life. Like
already.
It's the second? Yes, the second. The first was crazy. So
see, that's pretty interesting because already on the first there was so many things that were going on. For those who are watching and listening, if you were paying attention to the news at all, I mean, like, Japan got hit with an earthquake. There was LA got hit with one. In DC, right? There's like earthquakes all over the place. There's some craziness that was happening in Miami yesterday. I have no idea. Like there's so many weird things that are going on already, but let's get started with 2024.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, bring it on. So I mentioned in the beginning as well here in the intro that you were one of the speakers for Dare to Be Great 5, and the session that you and your co-presenter Trev did was stress management and you. Before we get into your story, I want to ask you really quick, where was the motivation? Like how did all of that come up for that session?
So we, where to begin? I just noticed I'm very passionate about stress management, the well-being of. Ever since I started in public safety, mm-hmm. I have it has been such a passion of mine to make sure that there's resources offered for our people. I don't I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree or any sort, but I definitely am passionate about people. So we applied for the APCO. We put in for the APCO Western conference, and that's why we created it. And then that one got canceled because of COVID. And then, so we've just been presenting it here locally, but honestly, her passion for the job and my passion for the job and stress management, and to be able to find a balance in this career, it's very important to us. So it was easy to create that.
And it's awesome too, because it could tell during the presentation, which the both of you had a really cool setup going into that session as well. I was very impressed. I'm a tech nerd, 911 nerd, all of the above. And when I saw what you had put together, I thought, oh, I might have to visit so I can see this, because this is pretty cool. But not just that, I feel like, the passion, the way the both of you spoke, there is more to the story, and kind of leads into the buildup of that session, like everything that you have experienced. And I feel like we're going to learn about that today. So to begin with, going back in time a little bit, because how many years do you have in public safety now, like altogether?
So a whopping almost 5.
5 years. Excellent.
Almost 5.
Excellent, excellent. And there's a lot that can happen in those 5 years, man. So
Yes.
how did you get into public safety to begin with? Do you come from a family of public safety folks, or green, just like jumped in?
Well, kind of. So the only public safety I have in like my biological family was my auntie was a 911 dispatcher forever. And she worked down in Salt Lake City, like back when there were switchboards. I remember her, like she would tell us about how she'd like plug in the switchboards. And yeah, she worked, and anyway, she was awesome. But I never really like thought about what she did. I don't know. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm going to do what my auntie did. I knew that's what she did.
Yeah.
But so I loved the job that I had before I started in public safety. I was a life coach. I enrolled people into trainings, and I loved it. I was good at it. I loved it. I love connecting with people. People came to me that wanted to change their lives, right? Like it was beautiful. I loved my job, but my significant other, she used to work at the jail here in Salt Lake County, and she pursued a social work career. After that, she quit the jail, pursued a social work career, and wanted to get back into law enforcement. So she started applying at some places, and I don't know, it sparked something in me, that because I was 39 at the time. So I was like, I can't be an officer. I mean, I could, but that's just not, I don't know. I just wouldn't be able to do that. And so there was just this spark that lit up in me when she started applying for places. And that went on for about a year, because I went back and forth about, I loved the job I had. I didn't want to leave the job I had, but there was this calling, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do. And this is just kind of how I think about things. My perspective on life is not traditional, so just bear with me on that. But it was a year, and I sat in my office. I closed my door. I had a beautiful office with cushy seats, and I made my own schedule, and I closed the door, and I literally just closed my eyes, and I asked my angels, the guides that be, like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Because I can't live in this limbo anymore. It was pulling me in so many directions. And I just surrender. I surrender to the next message that I get. That's what I'll do. I trust, right? And because this pull was just so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I went on with my day. 3 hours later, I got a phone call from a good friend of mine, and she had asked how I was doing. I shared that I was thinking about leaving my job, and she was just like, "What are you talking about? You love your job." I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just supposed to be doing something else. I know it." And she said, "Well, my sister works in dispatch." And I was like, "Okay, dispatch. That's where I'm going." And within 30 days, I had my job and hit the ground running. And that's just kind of how my life works.
How interesting is that sometimes it just happens that way? Phone call, get that phone call, and you're talking, and it just pops up. I mean, when you heard her say that, how did you feel inside? Like, did you almost immediately in the back in your head go, "Oh shit!" Like, there it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like instantaneously, it was like, okay, all right. And I don't know, kind of excited, like that I didn't have to be in limbo anymore. And nervous as shit because I'm old and like I knew it was a lot of learning to do. And I don't know. It felt like, okay, it just felt solid. Even though I felt nervous, I felt excited. And it was like, okay, I seriously just asked for this. And here it is. So get it.
Oh man, I can feel the energy, man. Like seriously, like I'm a firm believer that, along the lines that you're saying as well, there's something in the universe, whatever it might be, some sort of energy, some vibe or whatever that just kind of connects all of us in some certain way. And especially with those, when you get phone calls like that or things happen and you just like thanks, to whoever or whatever, like that's what I needed. That's what I needed to see. That's what I
Yep.
needed to hear. Anything like that. I'm a firm believer of that. So you end up getting literally this calling and feeling
Legit.
inside and,
Yeah.
and you start, searching around or well, you already kind of were, right? So when you end up getting, let's just say you start going into that interview process, what was that like for you as well?
It's just, so I think I sent an email.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think I sent an email to her sister. And then going into the interview, like, they're asking me how much experience do you have, all of this. And none. I just, so I felt a little bit inadequate. I felt nervous that I don't know, I'm used to being really good at what I do, right? And so going in, I felt vulnerable, just literally vulnerable, going in there and saying, well, my angels told me to be here, so here.
Right, yeah.
Right. So, but I mean, it was good. I felt good because I have that bottom line trust, like that deep trust that like, okay, I feel naive, I feel vulnerable, but I know this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I'm just gonna answer the questions the best I can, right? And
Yes.
I shared with our human resources coordinator. I told her okay, this is a confession. I failed the type test twice. So I failed the type test, and she was walking me out, and I'm like, I'll be back tomorrow. I know this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I know this is where I'm supposed to be. So I'll be back tomorrow. She still reminds me of that and shares that with people because she shares that hit her like that. It felt so refreshing to have someone come into it with that like deep knowing that it was a path for me. It wasn't just I need a job because this was like a path for me. And anyway, after 2 tries, and then on the 3rd, I passed the type test. And then they offered me a job. I took a huge pay cut to start in dispatch. And even then still, I was like, oh, okay.
There's something, it's hard to explain to people sometimes when we're talking about our profession that when we're doing this, I've said this to people many times, and I've said it on this podcast many times. We don't do this for the money. Like I tell people because people would say, when you first started out, how much were you making? You're probably making bank. And I said, when I first started out in 2001, I was making $7.25 an hour. I was living in Florida. Yes, I was living in Florida. I also had a house on the lake, and I could afford it with that. With that job, I could afford it. Now, I will say, one of the good things is that my landlady was pro police. Like they were all about law enforcement and dispatch and stuff, and so she gave me a little bit of a discount, which was awesome.
Nice.
It wasn't a lot, but it was enough, right? So but I tell people it's a calling, and it takes a special type of person to do this as well. And we don't do it for the money, because in a lot of places, people don't get paid that well. They're there because they want to be there, and they really do love what they are doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, I don't know that I would stay. I'm like, if it's meant for you, like if it's something that you really do love, I mean, money is important, right? Yes, I'm not stupid. Money is
Sure.
important.
Yeah.
However, so does enjoying what you do. And even though a lot of those years I was struggling and trying to find myself and a lot of different things that was going on, I still stuck with it because I genuinely loved what I was doing.
Yep. Yeah. And I didn't know what I was going to love about it. Right. But
Mhm.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I followed through, because this is I love what I'm doing. I freaking love it. It's
See,
fantastic.
and I love the beginning of your story as well, because you didn't let those 2 times stop you. You continued going. You told that person, and it's no wonder that that person tells that story as well, because it's like an underdog story. Those are the best ones, you know, you were overcoming something. You felt that this was something that you wanted to do, and you failed twice, but you came back and you rocked it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how your typing test was, but the typing test I took, excuse me, not at the last center that I was at. The last center that I was at, I was actually going for that center and another center at the same time. This was when I left Florida and moved back to Southwest Michigan, where I grew up. And the typing test for the other central dispatch, you could only get 3 wrong. And I think you had to get like 25 words per minute, but only 3 mistakes, and then you were done. I thought I was being badass, so I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then mistake number 1. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. And then I continue going, and just out of habit, I went to backspace, and that's considered a mistake as well, which I was not told that. So then I'm on my last try, and I thought, I don't think I'm gonna pass this. And
Pumpkins crushed.
so yeah, so what I started doing was I went to the proven uh almost way that you can get through typing, which is hunt and peck. And I was able to do that fast enough to get to the end and still have that 25 words per minute. But
Oh,
because I was able to watch also where I was typing, and I passed it. But otherwise, I would have failed it as well, man.
it was rough. It was rough.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you've been typing for years and you're like, "Man, I got this," and you go in, then you get that first mistake, you're like, "Oh, wait a minute. Maybe okay, hold on."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you end up going in that 3rd time, and they offer you a job right in the spot? Like, that's what it was?
Yeah. So yes, because I had an interview, and then passed the typing test, and then yes, they brought me in. So I went out to the lobby. They brought me in. I had like a second interview where they offered me a job. So
How many people were in that second interview with you? Was it just you and another person?
there was 4 of us. So human resources, the director, and the training coordinator at the time. So,
Oh, man. So it was like a, kind of like a panel interview?
yeah. I've heard of worse panel interviews, by the
Yes.
way, and I don't ever want to do that. That freaks me out. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a mini panel interview.
That same, dispatch center where I took that typing test, their interview, it was a 6-person panel, and it lasted almost 3 hours.
Dear God.
Oh, yeah. It was a long time, man. You've got the county administrator, a couple captains, and
Yeah.
then, you've got the dispatch admin in there as well. So, one person would start with a question, and each person would go down the line building on the one main question and
Hmm.
asking their own questions. So,
Hmm.
you're like, I mean, they're basically testing you to see if you can handle the pressure, you
Yeah.
know? So, it was nerve-wracking. And luckily, the other central dispatch that I was applying for, they ended up offering me a job. So I ended up going with them instead. Plus, it was the county that I grew up in, so I knew a
Oh,
lot of the area already. So that was that was a good thing as well.
you
So
said that was in Florida?
that was in Southwest Michigan. So in
Oh,
Florida, when I very first started out, I spent about 3.5, 4 years in Florida, Central Florida. It was a small police department in a small city called Frost Proof.
like frost proof.
Right.
Frost proof.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
It's no bullshit. That's the actual name. I'll say this really quick. The history behind the name is that I don't know how many years ago, but it used to be called Keystone. And one winter, if you can call it a winter in a southern state, they they had a lot of frost that killed the orange crops in the state, except for in Keystone. So the mayor renamed the city to
Oh,
Frost Proof.
all right. I mean,
True
that
story.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a quick story for you there.
Some history. I love history. It's great.
Yeah. So you end up getting through all of that. What was your training like? Did you get a chance to do a sit along or anything?
Yeah. So I came in for a sit along,
Mhm.
and immediately I I felt the energy on the floor. So I came from again a place from where people wanted to change their lives, right? Like, and you hear some shit when people are learning and growing in their life, but they wanted to do better, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I was used to. So I walk onto the call floor because we're the biggest center here in Utah. So we dispatch for 17, 18 cities. And we do police, fire, and medical. And we take 1.5 million calls a year. Like it's a lot. It's a lot.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we are constantly busy, but just walking onto that call floor, and I guess energetically didn't prepare myself for, like, I could just instantaneously, it just felt so heavy. And but I was like, wow, it was just an observation. It wasn't a judgment. It was just an observation, right? Like, it just is what it is. And so I sat along. He was great. He has moved on to be one of our Utah highway troopers. He was a great sit along. And then we had a pretty intense training. Well, I mean, I don't know what's typical for dispatch. I'm not sure what the training is normally, but we had a very structured training. We followed priority dispatch at the time, and so it was very structured and rigid. And we went through an academy for medical, fire, and police. And we, of course, then there was our post and our in classroom time. I think we were in classroom like 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I think.
Oh
Uh,
man.
I definitely had a few breakdowns, like questioning myself during training. Training was hard for me because it's just, we learn different when we're older. And it was a lot of technical information. Then I started getting in my head about the liability. Like, what if I fuck someone's life up? Like, it would be so easy, in like this, my brain patterns. I came home crying many times, thinking like, oh my God, I've seriously made the worst mistake of my life.
Hmm.
This is going to be hard. And but I just kept going, again, just remembering like how I got there. And yeah, training was a rough experience just for me. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about training now. Just because I feel like it's important. Training is so important I mean, it's the foundation, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
like a trainer can either make or break someone. And I had great trainers. My trainers, I was so blessed. And anyway, yeah. So then they, like 1 year out of training, they started having me train, and that was a whole nother. I
Fast.
was nervous because I felt like people were judging, right? No one was ever mean to me, but like inside of myself, I question, like, I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, right? Like, but
That makes sense. I mean, I feel like too, if we can back up just a little bit here, I love that um that you did in a way second guess yourself, that you were questioning a few things. I would think something was wrong if you didn't. If you were simply going in like guns a blazing, like I got this, like there's no worries or anything, I would feel like that's more of a red flag.
yeah,
Maybe you're hiding it. Maybe there's something, else going on that you just, you're too afraid to say or don't feel comfortable, or, kind of how you were saying with the training thing, that somebody might judge you or whichever, or somebody's watching, or anything like that. I I don't always you don't always want someone to second guess themselves, right? But when they're in training and everything, if someone has that thought process and they're open about it as well, I'm all about that, because we've got something that we can work with,
right.
and we can talk about it, and we can kind of mold it a bit and move from there. It's when you have someone who just straight up, let me give you a quick example here, and for those who are watching and listening as well, for them to be able to hear this. There was one point at the last center that I was at where we were so short staffed. I think we hired like 9 people at one time, and a couple of the folks were relatives of some of the field responders that we worked with. And because they had a little bit of experience, because they knew certain things, they thought that they were going to come into dispatch and just blow it away, in the sense of just being straight up awesome.
Yeah.
They killed it in the classroom, learning stuff, right? Geography, memorizing codes, policies, procedures, whatever. But then when that first call came in, whack, they were done. And they had mentioned, if I remember correctly, and again, this is years and years ago, but they had mentioned later on that they had kind of this nervousness going in, thinking about the phone calls, but they never said anything. So that's what I mean, someone just going in, just thinking, yeah, I'm going to rock this,
Yeah.
but they're holding in those, insecurities or anything else that might be there that we could have helped with before they got on the floor. So with you mentioning that, I'm glad that you had those moments. I mean, even me myself, there were times when I was in training, because the training that I had sucked in the beginning. It got better towards the end, but I wanted to quit. I remember coming home, talking to my spouse and saying, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this. Like, this is something is up. But a friend of mine that worked there told me to stick with it, had a conversation, and here we are today. So I kind of feel like, in a way, it was something similar that happened with you.
Yeah, and that's happened a couple of times through my extensive almost 5-year career, where I just have felt, and I'm not afraid. I am not afraid to be vulnerable, and that's one thing I've noticed, is that I wasn't used to a group, like I wasn't used to the hard ass, like I didn't realize that was a thing. Just so naive, right? Like I just didn't realize that was a thing. So I'm just super open with my feelings and like my insecurities and my vulnerabilities and the things that so it was interesting to kind of merge into that that environment. But with anything, I feel like if I experience someone vulnerable, then that gives me most permission to be vulnerable to, right? So I feel like, and I've learned so much from my coworkers that have been there for 700 years that like, right, like they've taught me so much. And I feel like it's I don't know, it's a good balance. And I bring stones and crystals to work. So I create a little grid on my desk every day I come in, and I don't care what, it doesn't matter what people think, but it's been interesting to see how many other people, like, because to me, that assists me with the calls that come in, keeping my energy in alignment. It's just something that I believe in. So I'm not afraid to be that, right? So many people were just like, what in the fuck is this girl? Like, who is she? And they will tell you that. But interesting how many people bring stones to work, and we talk about it, and it's fun. It's fun to experience people opening up. And I have learned so much from my coworkers in ways, because they have wisdom that I don't have. In this arena. And another time when I felt like I was going to quit is when in my training, because I was a call taker, then moved to dispatch, and hesitated to move to dispatch because I had got to a point where I was a really, really good call taker. And I knew I was just going to have to, anyway, emotionally prepare myself for going into something I have no idea what I'm doing. And anyway, I went from a very slow channel to my trainer was like, we're gonna do something different. We're gonna put you on Wasatch, which Wasatch is one of the busiest channels. And so instead of like kind of going in increments, I went from a very slow channel to a very fast channel, and
right into the lion's den.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I guess this is just what's going to look like. And it challenged me and my confidence, and it was rough. But I look at that, and I've used that for every challenge that I've had. Like, if I can do that, I can do anything. I truly can. Like, I just get to breathe through it. So I was grateful for her seeing that in me and trusting it, because we challenged the whole training, like, flow of things, right? And it's where, I don't know, and she always apologizes, but I'm like, it made me a better dispatcher because I got to fight my own demons inside of myself. Like, that was huge for me. That was very huge for me, because again, the scrutiny of, this girl hasn't even worked here very long. Like, what is different? Like, why are they doing this? So, and that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of pressure. So
I like that. I like that person saw something in you. Obviously, they saw something in you to have you move over to that spot and work through it. And everything that you're doing now, I mean, just to back up a little bit as well, you being able to be open and vulnerable for certain things, because then you end up seeing everybody else coming around, communication, different things that you're learning and stuff. And I'm a firm believer as well that one voice can make a difference. And it sounds like you've been doing all kinds of stuff over these 5 years, which has been awesome. So big plus to you on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's everybody has something to share, right? Like, everybody has like you say, everybody has a story. And I am grateful for my story, and I'm grateful for every other story as well, right? But I've just been on a journey in my life to live differently, right, than I have in my history. And I've just been in this ever evolving journey. So speaking up used to be really hard for me, but because of years and years and years of dedication of doing it different, right? It feels easier now. And I just feel like that's just part of my purpose. And it's not better than anybody else's. It's just part of my purpose. There's tons of gifts and talents that people have that I don't possess, right? Like that's just one of my gifts and talents that I've learned to embrace, and I'm grateful for it.
And that is excellent. And I love that you are doing that as well, because that literally the next generation of 911 who is coming in after you, you're putting all of this stuff out there, and they're going to feel more comfortable in a lot of different ways to be able to continue their own journey, but from your example, and inspired by you, motivated by you, and everything that you're doing there. Now, if we can, I want to touch on something really quick as we're talking about all of the stuff that you were doing, and getting through training and how all of this other stuff happened. But do you remember your first call or any of your earlier calls that you took?
I don't remember my first call, but oh yes. In training. I don't know. It was like I didn't get anything really crazy at first, like I went through phase 1 of training, just kind of, I was like, oh, okay, this, and then my phase 2 training was, we had some crazy shit. And my trainer was awesome. And I have no idea how she would do this, but she would take little cat naps, but wake up like doing CPR, like if I needed her. Like, it was just the weirdest. She's amazing. She truly is amazing. But yes, the first call that I remember that I was like, oh shit, was we've got a canal that runs through the whole valley, or a river, the Jordan River. And I had a kayaker who was stuck upside down in one of the, I don't know what it's called, like when the water like falls down to keep going. It's called I can't remember, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah. he was stuck underwater, and bystanders found him, and I walked him through CPR. That was my first like CPR call. But he had already passed, like he had been there for a while, but
oh man,
which I feel really like that was sad and that was horrible. And this is going to sound really weird, maybe, but it was like, I knew there wasn't anything I could do, but it was a good way to not practice, but like there were things I hesitated on in that call that could have impacted somebody who wasn't already gone. Right.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So I learned from that experience and took that to the next drowning call, which was a 8-year-old in a family's pool. And so, it just, I was grateful for that.
I think there's a lot of calls like that as you're saying it. I know exactly what you mean. And for those who are watching and listening, it does sound odd, especially if you've never done this job before or have been in a position where you're working in something like this. And there are many different things that you end up learning from different calls that end up helping you in calls later on. The majority of the time, a lot of the time, you're getting the call after things are already done. Someone's been found later. You do obviously get a lot of those calls where in that moment, you're giving CPR instructions, but there's most likely other calls that have come before where now you have this experience already. And you're going through, and maybe there was something that happened in a previous call that is now happening with the caller, or maybe someone in the background that you're able to tell them, tell that person to go somewhere else, or, you're giving directions or instruction from a previous call that's now helping with this one. And you continue the cycle. Some lives are saved and some lives there are not. And it's just, that's this just what happens in this profession and a lot of other professions. But I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it feels like we're grateful for things that are out of the norm. Like because we're just such a different environment. And so the things that we get to be grateful for are much different than and this being classified as a secretary. It's like
Yeah.
I did not know that. I had no idea. And after learning about what my job was about, it's so, I can't. But so the things that we're grateful for in our environment is just much different than outside of the call floor.
Right. I mean, in a sense, for those who are watching and listening, just I guess as a different example, not exactly the same, but when someone that that you're close to has been struggling with whatever disease or something, and now they've passed on, there's that thought process of they're in a better place now. Again, it's not the exactly the same thing, but it has that same kind of basic foundation where you're grateful for that
Right.
that person is no longer in that spot or whichever. And also, I mean, who knows if no one would have ever called that person might have been lost, for a long time, and then finally someone found them or whichever. There was that almost that closure as well there for any family members, but also, anybody else who was there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways that, it can be perceived, it can be taken, but this is how it is in 911. It's not all happy clouds and everything. There are some good moments, right? There
Mhm.
are
Oh,
some good moments. There's a
yeah.
lot of good moments. There's a lot of saves,
Yeah. Mhm.
but and I feel like a lot of times too, when we're first starting out, you end up getting some of these harder ones. Like, these are the types of things you're going to end up going through, which is why I'm always happy when I hear about folks in training or whichever that get to hear a lot of the hard calls along with some of those happy calls too,
Yeah.
because this is stuff that you're going to deal with. And I would rather people hear it on a tape or whichever so that they can kind of prepare themselves than not have it and go in and freeze up. And then
Yeah.
something really bad happens.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. 100%.
Now, these 5 years and everything, as we said in the beginning, when you were saying 5 years, and I said, hey, a lot can happen in 5 years. And if you feel comfortable talking about it, do you have, is there kind of a call that sticks with you at all?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of calls I feel like I can not detach, but trust that everybody's on their own journey and I'm just a piece in someone's puzzle, right? Like it's not up to me whether someone lives or dies. That's not up to me. I mean, I can do everything I can and show up every day. But so my perspective, I just know that everybody is on their journey. And I know I show up every day and I do the best I can. But there is definitely a couple that, even though I know that, I was training it was our first day in training with her out on the floor, and we had just switched over CADs. So we had a brand new CAD that we were using for our medical calls, and she was taking the calls and I was listening. And it was an infant that was purple, and the mom was just screaming. And my trainee just froze, right? This was her first call out on the floor. And so I went to go type in the code to get the CAD going, and I typed in the code wrong. And so the CAD froze. And I literally just went blank I just went blank. She was just screaming at me, telling me to, fucking do something. And even though it was only seconds, right, before I talked to gather myself to find the flip cards that we had when CAD was down. I just will never, ever, ever forget her screaming at me. And I know it wasn't about me, but I felt, oh, I'm going to cry. I just felt like I hadn't done everything that I could, right? I didn't feel prepared for that. And anyway, but my trainee was awesome. She fixed the computer stuff. And I did end up being able to start CPR, but just can't ever forget her voice, right? Like, and I do think about it often and like wish on a spirit level that she has forgiven that situation and that maybe I can too. So
I think that one, it's okay. It's okay to feel this emotion. I'm glad that you're allowing yourself to feel this emotion and put this out there. And thank you so much for the courage to share what you just shared and this story that sticks with you, because I can almost guarantee you there's probably a lot of folks who are watching, listening to this, who have dealt with something similar, and they're probably feeling that it's okay for them to let go as well. And actually, think about it and get past it and allow themselves to feel that emotion that they've probably been bottling it up. So thank you for sharing that. And this story, although it sticks with you, is a good thing to have as well for any other trainees that you have coming in, that might have a question or might have something similar, which also helping you because, you had that experience, and it'll continue to go with you, but not in a bad way. I hope that makes sense. It's a definitely a learning experience and something that you'll be able to teach from that and what has come out of it. And those things do stick with you. And I've heard a lot of people who have had or I've spoken to a lot of people rather that have had something similar, not to that extent, but something similar where it has stuck with them to where they're able to teach from it and have pulled the good out of it, where it's not really eating at them anymore, right? They've had that time to process, and then they continue with it, but they don't bury it. They bring it with them because they're able to talk about it and they can manage it. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, that call definitely was the worst. I mean, in just all of the mechanics, for whatever reason, there was definitely a lot for me to learn, and exactly what you're saying, teach from it as well. And that helps me heal, layer by layer. And it also teaches the others. So
a lot of those folks that are coming into it. I mean, you literally get the chance to mold these folks that are coming in, and you'll probably, and maybe you have already had a person like this, but you might end up getting someone who, you tell them something and they end up saying, well, yeah, you've been here, you've probably never done anything wrong, or not so much wrong, but have never had a situation like this, right? You don't know how I feel. You've never been in a situation like this. You've been here a long time. You have all this experience. And then you can bring up this story and say, listen, I do know where you're coming from. I want to tell you this story.
Yeah.
And that's where you end up relating, and we come together and learn from each other, which is why I feel that what we're doing right now is so important. Conversations like this, just simple, basic communication that in some centers, not all of them have that. Not all of them have folks like you who are so damn passionate about your job and it eats at you, these things, but you're turning it around and you're using it as something good. And that is what is awesome. You're not letting it eat at you to the point where you're becoming jaded and crusty, you know, like,
No.
you know, and just being like, no, I'm not going to teach you any of this. You're just holding it in or whichever.
Yeah.
No, you're being open about it. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. Like I love how you're doing this. This is a good thing, is what I'm getting at.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I look forward to what's coming, because I feel like the industry in general is shifting just to the, I mean, there's still work to do, obviously, but
Right.
the more vulnerable part of this work, I feel like it's no longer a secret that like this shit wears on us, and it wears on our first responders. It wears on the people out in the field. Like, these are conversations we have to be having, and we have to be having them because people are suffering, and people are suffering alone. And it's not necessary. It doesn't have to look that way. And so I'm grateful that I came into the arena now in this day and age where everything seems to be shifting. I never experienced it before, what it was, but I've heard in having conversations with my tenured coworkers, right? Like, just how different, and now talking to the field responders more and having more interactions that way, just recognizing how shut down some of them are, and just being able to be here in this moment, to just be part of the shift, just be part of the shift of that, because these things are happening in our world and they're going to keep happening. Like, this isn't going to just be a phase.
Right.
And there's still going to be responders out there that are going to need help. And I just think as a collective, I see it changing
That is,
everywhere.
it's a good thing, because
Mhm.
when I first started out, there were no resources, nobody was talking about it. And I remember when I first started doing all of this stuff, the very first thing that I did was in 2010, and people were like, "This is awesome, but nobody's going to listen to this." And I thought, "Oh, well, we'll see about that."
And
And
look at you.
we've been doing it ever since. So yeah, there's a lot of things that that have come from, which seems so easy. And I say it in classes that I teach. It seems so easy to talk to somebody, right? You just open your mouth and you talk, but it's not that easy. There's a lot that comes with it. There's those moments where you get in your head and you end up thinking, oh man, are people going to think that I can't hack it? Are they going to think that I just have a problem or whatever? And no, a lot of times those folks that end up hearing you talk about, calls or whichever, they've been just waiting to be able to talk and share as well. And again, that's why I feel like all of this is so important, to be able to continue the conversation and just moving forward and evolve from what it used to be to what it is now, and continues to be going beyond. And as I said in the beginning, we talked about your session a little bit, stress management and you. And I said, I feel like we're going to get into some of that buildup of how all of this came about. And having spoken to you here for just about an hour already, which it hasn't even felt like it, it's been an hour.
And yeah.
Um, we build up to your class. So you've in the 5 years that you've been in dispatch, you've gone through a lot of shit. and and you've learned a lot as well, which is why I loved when the session was submitted and I read it as stress management in you. I was like, hell yes, let's do this. So, with everything that you have said, but also with this class and stuff, where do you see yourself moving on with not just this class, but other things that you end up teaching, whether it be from experience or just other things that come about with stress management and all kinds of other things?
I this makes me want to cry in a good way, because I really, really, really would love, I see myself maturing and learning more about presenting and presenting more with, there's a lot of conferences that I would love to present at, just because I just feel like that there's such a need for this, and truly where I see myself is continuing to grow my peer support team at our center and taking that outside as well. Like, I would love to perfect and grow and expand in presenting, because I do feel like I have a message to share. And I feel like Trev and I are in this arena right now, in this moment in time, for a purpose. And I do have a desire to present more. I went to the Denise Amber Lee I Am the Be the Difference conference last year, and it was incredible. And I would absolutely love to be part of making a difference that way, because I do feel like we all have a story. And as I choose to be vulnerable, and as others choose to be vulnerable, right? Like the presenters there were epic, and our presenters on Dare to Be Great, epic. I learned so much by people just speaking and being who they are. So continue to grow as a dispatch supervisor. I'm 1 month into that.
That's awesome. That is excellent. And again, I can hear it in your voice. I can see it in your face, just how passionate you are. And you are the type of person that I would want to listen to, that I would want to come into a class and learn from, because there are a lot of classes where it starts out as one thing and then it goes into, make sure to buy this or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. But or maybe it starts out that way and you don't really hear anything about that person. Like, I want to hear someone who speaks from experience, who is sharing a piece of themselves, because I can put myself in those shoes. I mean, we're empaths. This is what we do every day, right? This is what dispatch does. And that's how I relate to people. I am fascinated by the stories of just human beings, man. Just how, the journey, all of it. And that's the type of person that I want to hear. So I'm excited to see where you go with all of this and sharing your story and teaching and everything. And as we go into the wrap up of this episode, which it has been awesome to have you on here and learn more about you and hear your stories and such. Well, one last question for you.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time with the information, experience, knowledge, everything that you have now to talk to yourself in the beginning 5 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
The trusting in myself. So even though the self-doubt was necessary, I would truly just remind myself just to keep trusting, like, because it's my own demons, right, that got in my way. And so just to let go of the self-doubt and just lean in. I did that to a point, but there were definitely times where, and just to be more compassionate with myself as I was learning and growing.
That's awesome. That is good advice. And I always like to ask everyone that question there at the end, because there's so much involved in the journey up until the point, right, that we're recording, and talking about your specific journey, right? But then to look back and just think like, damn, what would I tell myself? Like, what would I tell myself in the beginning? but also what I listen to myself. And I think if I went back and I told myself, I mean, I definitely would have like, well, obviously you went through something, so you know. So it's always good to hear what folks have to say and what they would do, not so much do differently, because if you change some of those things, you'd be a completely different person than what you are right now, right?
Right.
If
Right.
you were trying to save yourself in the beginning, hell, you might not even be here right now. You might have thought, "Oh, I'm not gonna do this." It's not so much going back in time to change anything. It's just going back to give yourself rather a little bit of that advice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been excellent having you on. I was excited to have you on, and it was just awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for what you do. So you're doing it.
I appreciate it. It has been an experience.
I get that. I get that. But you bring a lot of people together and a lot of awareness about what people do behind the scenes. And I'm very, very much grateful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And again, it was awesome having you on. It was an honor to have you here, and I will be back with you here in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on X, on Facebook, all of social media. You can also become a supporter of the podcast and help support, what it is that I do, whether it be on Patreon or Facebook. But to make it easier, you can simply go to links.co/WTT podcast. Once again, that is links with two I's.co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything on there, my email, all of my social media, where to follow, as well as the latest episode that has gone up. And you can also find where you can purchase Imagine Listening, the book, where you can pre-order book number 2, and where you can go for podcast merchandise and supporting the podcast. So again, that is links with two I's.co/WTT podcast. There's a lot of stuff that is going to be coming up in 2024. So make sure to watch out for that. This this episode has been supported and sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services. Again, shout out to subscribers of the podcast. This can be seen on Facebook as well as YouTube, X. I keep wanting to call it Twitter because it's always been Twitter, but I said it right the first time, X, and as well as LinkedIn Live. You can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. Happy New Year, and we will see you in the next one.